And Liesl decides to leave Newcastle. She decides it's not for her. And she moves to London. So she's on this plane going up and up and up toward the dazzling sun. "Stay close to me, Icarus, not too close to the sun," the father screamed in desperation. But his words fell on deaf ears. The boy continued to soar up and up toward the sun. And with Daedalus flying below him, he saw a white feather flutter through the sky. And looking upwards, he saw more and more feathers detach themselves from his son's wings.
And I'd like you, in your groups, just to take 2 to 3 minutes to list 3 to 5 words that encapsulate your response to that performance. What was Up and Up and Up Towards about? I think the ways in which the experience of the Creative Labs influenced my research is just to make me think more explicitly about really the relationships between language, or language learning in my case, but language specifically, and performance. The way I've started to see performance is as a means of kind of making those mechanics visible and sort of breaking down and deconstructing what we do every day. I think you've got it. I mean, all these words that you've been coming up with, like incongruous, uncomfortable, and all the words around those sorts of disconcerting themes, not making sense, not understanding, being in a language that you don't quite get, that's absolutely what it was about. But my research is, or rather was, about motivation for learning English as a foreign language. And this brings me to one of the reasons why I wanted to look into ways of adapting this research for performance. I think we have a very strong and very kind of prevalent public discourse on immigration and language, which says that immigrants or sort of academic visitors or anybody coming into the UK must learn English. This is absolutely, this is imperative to getting on well here. But we never talk about how difficult this actually is. I was looking for a way to put an audience into that position of discomfort, into that kind of place where you think you know what's going on, you think you know the rules, you think you know what's going to happen, but then actually you don't. I felt that performing research and adapting research for performance could help in some way to kind of address both these issues. It would be a means of raising awareness or helping people to raise awareness in a way that would engage them emotionally and experientially, and actually sort of allow them to construct their own meanings and their own interpretations.
I think the first thing we did when we first got together was just got a big sheet of flip chart paper and kind of just started talking, really, and things that came up we thought that were interesting or thought that were relevant we put down. And quite quickly we kind of, I think within the first morning, we got to this idea of how we could play around with form to kind of disconcert people in the same way that Lou's participants had been disconcerted when they came here to Britain, and see if we could kind of elicit some of that same responses in the audience. The first thing that we did today, actually, creative inquiry, we use that quite a lot as a start point for devising new work and coming up with content. And creative inquiries, something we developed in primary schools actually, and it's actually a mix of philosophy for children and drama and theatre practices. And it's a way of getting people to create together.
The philosophical question we chose was, what ambitions are acceptable? And we kind of felt that really fit really well with the language learning. And also Icarus, there's kind of a theme there that connects with Icarus with that question. I think what's tricky about that performance, and it seemed that you enjoyed it, which is great, and that you had the feelings that we wanted you to feel, but the connections that you make with Lou's research probably only really come when Lou tells you about her research. So I think there's a tricky balance there. There's also a tricky balance when you're purposefully disrupting something, when you do that, how you do that, how much you do that. I think we were making actually connections with your, it was slightly different in terms of it was a grotesque thing you're looking for, but it's when you purposefully mess with something. I think I was worried that we'd be a bit egg on my face if it didn't quite work. Do you know what I mean? And I think we managed to sort of strike that balance reasonably well, but that was something that we were thinking about.
I think it's been really interesting to work with someone who's totally far removed, not totally far removed, but not a theatre maker. And I think it really challenges what you think, particularly about form.
Having those 3 days intensive time with the academic in the room, which doesn't always happen. I think the most challenging thing was sort of what I mentioned before, the riding that line of having a performance that is purposefully disruptive and plays with form, and the risk that it's going to fall flat and people don't quite understand what you're going to do.
The opportunity to have 3 days with no brief and no parameters is just amazing. We're thinking now in very practical ways as to how we can take further. So I'm putting in a bid this summer for an ESRC project, which actually will allow me to fund something to help disseminate PhD results, because this is from a PhD thesis. So we're going to look at ways of writing something together into that bid and taking all these questions into account. But yeah, particularly how do I make this actually about the research? You know, how to do something that does kind of make the mechanics of the performance and of language learning visible, which is a lovely phrase that Brad used when we were doing some work together. And yet also have the story there, you know, also have the kind of human side of the story and the characters involved in it.